Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Vegan Tour Guide Podcast with your host, Mike Knight, where we'll bring you great information about a vegan plant-based diet. It doesn't matter if you've been vegan for years, part-time vegan, or just gathering more information. This podcast is for you. Thanks again for joining, and let's get today's tour started.
Hey, everybody. How are you? Welcome to the Vegan Tour Guide Podcast. This is Mike Knight. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. For those returning listeners, thank you so much for coming back. Hope you've been enjoying everything and helping spread the word. And for the first timers, hey, thanks for joining us. Sure, you're going to get a lot of great information out of this. Always invite you to check out some other episodes as well. But I can guarantee you that today we have a great episode on for you. Today is Dr. Pam Popper. Dr. Pam, when you hear this, I'm telling you, you will know there is no exaggeration when I tell you she brings a lot of information, a lot of health, focused information we're going to talk about today. She's a naturopath. She speaks, internationally. She's an expert, in nutrition. She even has what's called the Wellness Forum Health, executive director there. She does a lot. And so it's a very interesting conversation. She talks about a lot of things that are misconceptions, even within, the vegan plant-based diet. And so that is very interesting. Gives a lot of great tips and advice. Even talks about some training that she has available for people, like myself, that are always looking to add to knowledge and information for ourselves, and then also to give that out to others when people ask us about this. So she's going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Plus, you'll get to meet Schroeder. And so that is always an added benefit here, meeting Schroeder there with Dr. Pam. So without further ado, here's Dr. Pam.
Well, welcome to the Vegan Tour Guide, Dr. Pam. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
I've got to do first things first, the important things. Got to ask, how is Schroeder doing?
Schroeder is fine. Actually, he's sitting here watching a squirrel in the window. So if you hear he's very enchanted with the squirrel. He's climbing up and down this tree right in front of the window right now, so he may make noise. I always warn everybody when I do these things from home that you may get a few meows here and there.
Well, listen, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have what I affectionately talk about, my furry four-legged daughter. And that is my baby girl, my dog Chi, and she's the same way. Her and squirrels. She definitely wants to meet one face to face one day. She tries her best, and so she's the same. If she hears one outside, she definitely puts a stress test on the glass on the doors.
Yeah, well, and you have the additional fact here that Schroeder has been so involved in all of the things that I've done. I mean, he was intimately involved with all the research for Forks Over Knives, for my book, Food Over Medicine. So he feels like he has sort of an ownership interest in everything that goes on here. Very knowledgeable about plant-based nutrition and all the things we're going to talk about. So sometimes he weighs in, pick crucial times to make a comment or two,
Oh, yeah. Look, he says, look, Mom, I have royalties coming. Listen.
Yeah. Well, he lets me take the credit because that's the kind of cat he is.
That is awesome. Well, I want everyone to know a little bit about you right off the bat. I mean, you do a lot, and so I'm excited about this. I mean, you're a naturopath. I know I was researching internationally recognized expert. You speak all over on nutrition, medicine, health. And then some other in there, you also are executive director, squeeze in time for the Wellness Forum Health. Plus, I think, yoga studio? I mean, is there anything else you decide to fill your day with? Mercy.
Well, lots of things, actually. But my life's work is really dedicated to the idea that consumers, when it comes to health and diet and medicine and all the decisions that we all have to make sooner or later. I mean, we have parents and kids, and we're eventually going to get older, and we have to interact with the medical system. But people don't make informed decisions about it. And so we own a school. We train health professionals. We offer programs to the general public. We have members in 35 countries. Of course, I do a lot of movies and documentaries and books, and all of it is geared toward this idea that informed medical decision-making has got to become the rule, because when people are properly informed, once they see the facts, they tend to not be so interested in many cases in drugs and surgery, and they get a whole lot more interested in taking better care of themselves because they recognize that that offers them the best chance for a long and happy life. And that involves eating an optimal diet, exercising, paying attention to the way you live your life. So it seems like I'm all over the place in terms of how many things we do, but they really all are tied to that one central theme, that consumers are not informed. In fact, health professionals are not informed. When they get informed, it drives better decisions and better choices.
Yep. I love, like you said, you keep going to the word informed, because that's why I do this. That is my whole purpose and passion behind spreading the word, because I just want to inform people. It's, I tell people, I was talking to someone that we had here. I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We had a Veg Fest Junior, kind of little pre-work to our big Veg Fest coming up in a couple months. People were there talking, and I said, if somebody, I just want people to have the reason that they do something, yes or no, in life. I said, I never liked hearing someone say, I don't want to go to a plant-based, vegan, diet and lifestyle because I heard about protein, which I'm going to ask you about later because I know you definitely have information on that. And they throw that information because they've received little or bad information. And I say, whoa, we can talk about that, because if that's the reason you don't want to go, then I want, provide you information. And so that's my point too, is I want to spread that information, because once people understand it, then I think it even makes it easier for them to make that decision.
Absolutely. And here's what I think is just astounding. Somehow the medical profession has managed to get itself exempted from the way that people do everything else. And here's what I mean by that. When people buy a car, I've watched the purchasing behavior of lots of people. I'm 60 years old, so I've had lots of time to watch that and observe my own behavior too. You're going to buy a car? Oh my gosh, people are reading consumer reports and they're going online and they're doing all this research before they buy a car. Gas mileage, all kinds of things they want to know. Buying a house, even more research, school systems and mortgage rates, and people buy a blender and get online and look up information, and then they show up in a doctor's office and do what they're told, or they see a headline in a consumer publication and change their diet, and they do these things without the same type of due diligence. And then to make the analogy even more insane, think about the way that we purchase services once we've done the research, which we don't do for medicine, but then we expect things to work and be effective. So think about taking your car to a brake shop, for example, saying, the brakes are squeaking and I think I need new brake pads. And instead of actually fixing it 3 days after you pick up the car from the repair shop and pay the bill, it's worse than it was before, and now you're hitting, mailboxes and trees on your way home from work every day. You would go back to the car shop and demand your money back or to fix it, and if this went on with any degree of regularity, the Attorney General in your state would shut this place down. Mm-hmm. And so that's not what happens in medicine. People go to doctors, and I think doctors are well-intentioned. I think they're poorly trained, which is a big part of the problem, but they go to doctors. They really don't get measurably better. They sometimes get worse. And people are paid in the healthcare profession for being busy, but not necessarily being effective. So part of why consumers have to be so informed, medical professionals need to be informed too. It's one of the reasons we started a school. But in the meantime, until we shift the training for healthcare professionals, consumers really need to be informed, because much of the information they get, they shouldn't follow blindly, and much of the stuff that is done doesn't make people better, it makes them worse. And the same thing is true with dietary programs too. Most diets that are commonly talked about in the mass media will cause you to get significantly worse instead of better over time.
Mm-hmm. It's wild. It's even like, my story, a little bit. I've had multiple things that brought me along, my past. And one was, and I work out, I stay in shape. And I went in and I was told, well, we did, in fact, it was called a Berkeley test, like a blood test. And they said, your cholesterol is elevated. And they said, look, let's be preventative or whatever. And, we're going to put you on something called Lipitor. And I started doing some research, and I said, number one, I don't like drugs anyway. I don't like getting a lot of drugs, pharmaceuticals in my system anyway. So right off the bat, I wasn't excited. Started research. I was like, I'm just keep seeing a lot of stuff saying that is not exactly good for my liver and some other things in my body. And that was kind of a tipping point. I was already in progress. That was a tipping point for me, going plant-based vegan. I come back a year later, and the doctor walks in, and he's sitting there looking, like his iPad there with everything researched. I'll never forget. He's like staring at it. He goes, "Wait, what'd you do?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "What did you do?" He goes, "Your blood work is like reverse." He's like, "Perfect." He goes, "What'd you do?" So I went to a plant-based, vegan diet. He goes, "Well, don't stop." And ever since then, I mean, it's, every time I go in, he's like, "Hey, you're looking great, ship shape," and we have great conversations about, he's very open, he's very conversation about everything's going with, vegan and plant-based. He's, incorporated some stuff himself, he'll tell me. And so, but yeah, like you said, it's just, things are just thrown out there, and people don't research, don't ask.
Well, and you bring up another point, too, which is that it's possible to be fit, or at least give the appearance of being fit, athletic, exercise a lot, lean, and still have markers for cardiovascular disease. You had higher cholesterol, and then, of course, everybody's talking about right now the guy from Biggest Loser, Bob Harper, who just had a heart attack recently. And I wrote an article on that a week or so ago, and here was his diet was terrible, by the way, eating oils and fat, and pushing protein, and as you mentioned, we'll talk about that. But here was a guy who was like the face of fitness. He was the host of Biggest Loser, and had a heart attack, and fortunately survived. But it's and I don't know if you know Alberto Salazar, Olympic gold medal marathon runner and now coach. Had a heart attack a few years ago, and was featured in Runner's World. And of course, he had surgery, and he's taking drugs. And his expert cardiologist said, "Well, he's getting the best care. It's a chronic condition, and family history is the reason why this happened to him." And of course, that's not the reason it happened to him. Runners are notorious for saying, "I can run off the extra calories. I can eat beef, cheese, and French fries." So anyway, the you can exercise, and I'm a fan of exercise. We own a gym and a yoga studio, as you mentioned earlier. But exercise is not a substitute for a healthy diet, and you're not going to exercise away the plaque in your arteries that can put you at risk of stroke or heart attack.
Yep, exactly. It's that's exactly what it was with me, because my doctor's even saying that. He goes, "Look, I know you're in shape. I know you," because the same thing, I ran, and I wasn't even eating horrible, but I definitely needed to make, my transition. I definitely needed to do that. But yeah, it's just those who you can't rely. And I've got some friends that do that. They think, "Well, no, I stay in shape, but I run." I'm like, "Yo, you got to understand, you know me. I grew up my whole life, all kinds of sports. I tell people I'm a meathead wrestler growing up. I said, I've always been in it, but that's, you got to do kind of what I call all the spokes on the wheel. It's not just a one thing as far as, your body and taking care of yourself. You got to look at these multiple things, and this, better way of eating has got to be a part of it."
Well, and there's even another dimension to this, too, which you mentioned, and that was that your diet wasn't horrible. And I think that's another huge misconception, which is the justification that people use when they say things like, they'll define their diet in terms of what they don't do. I don't drink soft drinks, I don't eat fast food, and, they'll tell you all the things that they don't do that make them better in terms of their eating habits than most of the people we know. However, it's not good enough because, and this is an analogy that I use when I'm talking to our members about the types of changes that they need to make, and that is that changing your diet is it's very similar, in fact, to a combination lock. So just visualize you've got a safe in the wall of your bedroom, and inside is $10,000, and on the front is a combination lock, and it takes 4 numbers to open it up. So you've got $10,000 in the safe, and you dial up 3 of the numbers, and it won't open. You don't get $7,500. You got to get that 4th number to get the whole $10,000. And so many times in our office, we're talking to people who are doing better than many, but they're not doing enough for it to be protective. So I commonly hear in my office things like, I don't eat fast food. We don't eat pizza. I don't do this. I don't do that. So how in the heck did I end up with cancer or lupus or have a heart attack or whatever? And it is that you're doing a lot of great things, but you didn't get that fourth number right, and that's what we're going to do now, which will prevent the next occurrence or keep this thing from progressing, or in many cases, even reverse the condition that you have.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, let me do this. If you don't mind, I want to hear a little bit of your story.
Oh, okay.
So kind of your journey and all like that for people listening, because, again, that's one thing I love doing for my listeners, and kind of just a theme that I like putting out there is hearing people's individual paths, because that helps, I think, people, relate. They say, I can, that's how I was, and so I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey to where.
And mine has two dimensions to it. One is my own personal health, and the other is what I decided to do in terms of building a career around this. But I guess if I turned the clock back about 23, 24 years ago, the best way that I could describe my whole life was unintentional living. And here's what I mean by that. I didn't really have any great ideas about what I wanted to do for a living when I graduated from high school. Like, some people know they want to be a teacher or whatever. I didn't really want to be anything. So I just had jobs. I did some things well. I come from that nice upbringing that says if a job's worth doing well, doing it all, you should do it well, and all that kind of thing. So, but I wasn't really jazzed by any of it. So I'm just kind of marching through life doing whatever to make a living, not paying any attention to my health, not paying any attention to what I ate. I'd gotten kind of chubby. I guess that's a nice way of saying I was fat and out of shape, didn't exercise, not involved politically. I mean, I didn't vote for years. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that now. But just unintentional living. And I don't know what the ultimate end of that is, but I'm pretty sure it's not a great thing. So the best thing that ever happened to me was, first of all, I didn't have cancer or anything like that. I had some wake-up calls that told me I should be paying attention, but of course I didn't. And so one day I was reading an article in a magazine, and you have to remember the time. It's like 20-some years ago. Nobody's talking about this stuff much, and it was about diet and health. And I was real intrigued by it, and I don't even remember what the article basically said, but what happened next was really important, and that was that I made a casual comment to an acquaintance of mine who said, if you're interested in diet, I've got a book you should read. Her husband was a physician. They used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they had become friendly with the McDougalls. And so this book was written by John McDougall. Of course, there's no internet, nothing like that back then. So I read this book, and I couldn't believe it. Here was a doctor, a medical doctor, who wrote a book about helping people reverse diabetes and recover from cancer. I was blown away. I mean, who knew, right? So I got a couple more McDougall books and read them and changed my diet. And got so excited about this, I decided, everybody should know about it. If I didn't know and I thought I was a pretty smart person, then probably nobody knew and everybody should. So that's how my career started. And so I went from, not paying any attention to my health to being really hyper interested in my health, and lost a lot of weight, became a runner, ran some marathons, my skin cleared up, I wasn't tired all the time anymore. In fact, if I were to show you pictures of me now versus 38-year-old me, you wouldn't even, I looked older then than I do now. So anyhow, I went back to school, and before I even got out of school, people were asking me questions. So that's how I started what became Wellness Forum Health. And in the beginning, we just focused on diet, and then over time we expanded what we did for people to include informed medical decision-making and interventions for psychological conditions, musculoskeletal conditions, chronic degenerative diseases, employer plans. We started a school. We bought a yoga studio and a gym, opened a commercial food operation, hired the best chef in the country who later became a business partner with us, and so here we are today. And so, here I am, intentional Dr. Pam Popper, very involved with a lot of political issues around this medical care issue and all that sort of thing. And that's my story. And so I'm very lucky that I didn't come to this place from, having some life-threatening illness and all that sort of thing, first of all. And I think I'm very lucky to have found something that I enjoy so much. There's an old Mark Twain. People say to me all the time, oh, you work all the time, you work all the time. I said, well, there's an old Mark Twain saying that I love. It says the finest day in a man's life is when he falls in love with his work, because then he never has to go to work again. So when this becomes hard work and I don't feel like I want to do it, I guess I'll move on. But I've been at it for 21 years, and so far it seems to continue to fascinate me. And I'd sometimes rather sit home and read medical journals on Saturday morning than, go out for coffee. So that's my story.
No, that's great because, from watching your videos and all, because I think I told you, I was actually referred to you and started watching you by a friend of mine now. She's been on the show, and now we stay in touch and just loves you, Laura. She's the one who actually, had sent me your information. I was like, oh, my gosh. I started researching you. But you can tell that, you definitely do your research on stuff. I mean, it definitely comes through. I love even the video I want everyone to go see. They're on your site, and we'll put your site in the show notes, of course, and all, talking about, like, the five things that surprise people. And I like that. I love that video that you put up there. Because right off the bat, I remember you were talking about oils.
Yeah. And that does shock people.
Yeah.
And again, there's such a huge disconnect between what people hear in the media and what the medical journals actually show to be true. And then, of course, you have a lot of confusion even in the articles that are published in the medical journals, which is why people need a little bit of help in terms of how to sort all this out. I mean, the medical journals are cluttered with so much garbage right now that you can find a study to support almost anything. And I always use the example that you can find studies that say that smoking is really okay. And they're published in journals like the Journal of the American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. However, in order to cherry-pick those studies to make your point, you have to ignore hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies that show the opposite. So, one of the problems we have is a lot of folks who don't really know what they're doing, journalists who, for example, set themselves up and promote themselves as health gurus. And I think it's wonderful that they have an interest in the topic, but they simply don't know how to accurately represent what the preponderance of the evidence says to the public. So, people think that olive oil is good for you and low-fat dairy is good for you, and you should eat a lot of fish because it's good for your heart. And, again, myth after myth after myth after myth that people chase around after. And then the unfortunate part of that is because a lot of people do these various things, then they have heart attacks anyway or whatever. Then you have a whole group of people who say, see, diet doesn't have anything to do with it, and then their doctors tell them that too. So that's how we end up in a situation where diet is not used as a primary intervention tool, and it should be in many cases, and why people are eating a diet that will make them worse instead of better.
Well, and tell me too, I'm curious, because I even have my own personal question here, when you talked about oils, because a lot of now stuff that I see out there, they're trying to incorporate. They say, look, oils, work more oils in, even like coconut oil, because of like brain function. And so based off, I know what you had said about, look, oils being so, the caloric density of oils and just, everything. What is kind of your feedback? I know to kind of tell people, because I know I got to watch the video, but putting it out there for people, I know you said, look, oils need to really phase those out. And so anything you would prescribe, kind of people thinking about things like the cardiovascular, and brain function, that oils get, quote, if you will, attributed to, what is maybe some suggestions you say for that actually are good foods to eat that do, those?
Well, let's first of all, there are no individual foods or nutrients that are responsible for health. And that's the first thing, is we have to move the discussion away from this food is good for your heart and this food is good for your brain and this food is good if you need to increase your iron levels or whatever. And people write emails to me all the time asking questions like that. Here's what I have, my condition, or here's what I'm interested in promoting. So what should I eat? And the answer is always the same. You want to eat a diet concentrated in whole foods with 4 primary food groups, fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, and low in fat and high in fiber. And then whatever it is that you emailed me about, that's the basic thing. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't modify that diet. If you have celiac disease, you eliminate gluten, for example. But that's the basic dietary plan for everybody, with modifications depending upon the individual's issues.
Okay.
So having said that, now let's talk about what is the problem with oils, and then how does the opposite of that, the whole foods approach to this, fix it? Well, the problem with oils is, first of all, weight promoting. So we have 2/3 of the people in this country who are overweight or obese, most of them now obese of that population. And you're talking about a product that is so calorie dense and fat dense. We're talking 120 calories and 14 grams of fat per tablespoon. So think about that for a minute. And here's what that means in terms of weight. If, this version of Pam Popper, lean, 128-pound Pam Popper, started eating an oil-based salad dressing on one of my salads every day, and in a year, I'd be 37 pounds heavier.
Whoa.
So we're not going to lean down. I mean, that's just a mathematical calculate the calories, unless I change something. Now, I exercise almost every day, and I'm eating as clean as anybody you'll ever meet, so I don't know what the heck we're going to change. So just adding that puts 37 pounds on. So we're not going to solve our obesity problem with people eating this calorie, fat-dense stuff. Now, some people say, well, I'm not overweight. I'm getting away with it. Well, your arteries aren't getting away with it. And if there is one thing I would change in the design of human beings, it would be that I would put nerve endings inside the blood vessels so that when you eat a bunch of fat and you lay down plaque, you'd have excruciating pain. Now think about the miles of blood vessels in your body, what this would really be like. Well, once you spent the night on the couch in the fetal position, you would not do that again, okay? But what happens is, because that's not the way we're designed, people can eat an enormous amount of cholesterol and fat deposited in the arteries, and then they find out sometimes, the first time they find out they have a problem, they have a heart attack or a stroke. So your arteries aren't getting away with it. So that's why we have to get rid of it. Now, if you want to take care of your blood vessels so that you not only don't have cardiovascular disease or an event, and you keep your brain function really high, because Alzheimer's disease basically results in the same poor dietary choices that lead to coronary artery disease, then you eat a whole foods, low-fat, very low-fat, plant-based diet. I mean, when we talk about low-fat, let's put this in perspective. The Japanese, the Okinawans, who have some of the longest lives on the planet, 9% of their calories come from fat.
Oh, wow.
And here in the United States, people think that 30% fat is a low-fat diet. It's not. I mean, we're talking 15% for people who are healthy, and if you have coronary artery disease or cancer, it probably ought to be lower than that. So you can see, big difference there. So it's the totality of your diet. It's all the choices that you're going to make that add up to, for most people, there are exceptions, but for most people, that's what's going to create your health status. You just have to do the whole thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then kind of if we could move to, if you don't mind, some of your feedback on protein and calcium.
Well, let's start with calcium, then we'll go to protein.
Okay.
Calcium is tied up in a bigger issue also, which is the idea that if a small amount of a nutrient is good for you, then the party line is 25 times as much must be great. Okay? So therefore, it's not that you need calcium. You need a lot of it. In fact, so much of it that you can't get enough from food, so you have to take pills. You need potassium. In fact, you need so much of it that you can't get it from food.
Yep.
So that's how this is promoted. And I'll tell you why that is. It's kind of an interesting story. We didn't used to know a couple hundred years ago what was in food. We had no idea what food was made of. And so you might remember reading about people who suffered from true deficiency diseases like scurvy or beriberi.
Yeah.
And then we discovered nutrients in foods that solved those problems, vitamin C, B vitamins. And so you can understand how the mentality arose that there are magical properties in food. But I just researched this because I'm writing the book based on the film Food Choices. And if you go back and read what was done, nobody had the ability to, at the time that these discoveries were made, to extract vitamin C from food and all that sort of thing and turn it into a commercial product. So how scurvy was solved on boats was not giving the sailors vitamin C pills. They made sure they had lemons, limes, and citrus fruit on the boat, and then they didn't get scurvy anymore. So it was actually solved with food, not supplements, right?
Yep.
So, but we forgot all about that. We forget about history. People don't read. They don't pay attention to that. So now we think we need to take all these nutrients in supplement form. So back to the idea of calcium. calcium is needed for bone metabolism and bone building, and the bones and teeth are the biggest repository of calcium in the body. But calcium needs are shockingly low. In other words, not all countries, not all populations focus on these individual nutrients, and in most parts of the world, people consume a diet that has somewhere between 400 and 700 milligrams of calcium, much lower than the RDA here, and they do not have crumbling bones. So if you stop thinking about taking in, women my age, 1,500 milligrams of calcium, and you're focused on, somewhere around 500, maybe 600, well, it's really easy to get that calcium from plant foods. And a medium-sized orange has 110 milligrams of calcium, and most people don't think of oranges as high calcium foods, but in a given day, it is not a problem at all to take in enough calcium to maintain your strong bones. Now, protein, the same thing has happened. You can't get enough of the stuff. Yes, it's necessary. It's needed for health. But here's the best way to explain protein so that people understand why they do not need a protein load. Let's start with carbohydrate because the comparison is important.
Okay.
So carbohydrate is to the body like gasoline is to the car. So here's the deal. I drive my car around for a week and the tank gets kind of low and I have to go to the gas station and fill it up again because the car uses up the gas. The body uses up carbohydrate. We eat sweet potatoes and salads and that all gets converted. The carbohydrate gets converted to glucose and the glucose goes into the cells and we use it up for energy so that you and I can have this conversation right now. And we have to eat some more. We've got to get some more just a few hours later. Protein is not like that, okay? Protein is digested in a similar way. It's broken down into its constituent parts in protein foods, and you end up with amino acids. And then those amino acids circulate throughout the body, and the body directs them to do things like make hormones and enzymes. And when the enzyme's finished doing its job and it kind of starts to disintegrate, the amino acids don't necessarily die with it, and they're recirculated again. And so the best way to explain protein, to finish the analogy, is protein is to the body like the water in the fountain downtown in the town square. All right, so if there's 500 gallons of water in the fountain, they don't go out every morning and put 500 new gallons in. They only replace the 20 gallons that splashed out or evaporated. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it is with protein. These amino acids keep recirculating and recombining to do various things. And we only have to replace the amino acids that finally were flamed out and used up. And we can measure how much that is with nitrogen excretion studies because protein amino acids contain nitrogen. So that was a real long answer to your question. But the big difference is that carbohydrate is like gas. Got to keep replacing it. Protein, you have to keep replacing it, but it gets recycled a whole lot, just like the fountain in the town square with the water. And you only have to replace the part that actually has been excreted and is no longer usable.
Ah, very cool. I like that. Great breakdown. All right, well, let me... On this, and I know you'd mentioned earlier and kind of with your research and studies and you bring in new things to people, I know you kind of use the term a new healthcare model kind of for you. What is that to you, kind of that you put out there and all? What kind of is the breakdown of that?
Well, our model of healthcare, and we're building an alternative system around it where gradually we'll even be the insurer at a certain point in time in the near future. But what should be done in healthcare is that, first of all, the informed decision-making. Before anybody does anything, they should be given a full assessment of the risks and benefits, and that includes diets, by the way. You can lose weight on a paleo diet, but you should get full disclosure that you're likely to end up constipated and your bones will crumble if you stay on this diet long enough, and you're going to have bad breath and your energy levels will go down and you're not going to be able to think clearly. Most of the weight that's lost is water weight and your increased risk for cancer and heart disease, but nobody does that, right? So whether it's a diet or a surgical procedure, people should be informed as to the risks and benefits and the alternatives that are available along with their risks and benefits. So if you were to, for example, show a patient in a cardiology office, we can put you on Lipitor and we can give you a bypass surgery, but the efficacy rate for Lipitor reduces your risk of a heart attack or stroke by 1.6%. The bypass surgery doesn't change your risk profile at all since you didn't have a heart attack yet, but your arteries are clogged. Or let's show you Esselstyn's data on what happened when he put terminal cardiovascular patients on a plant-based diet. So that's the way that the discussion should go. And inevitably, people always say, well, people want a quick fix. Some people do. We live in America, so pick the quick fix. But I think a lot of people would pick something else. And so we need to make diet and lifestyle choices. We need to put those on the table as viable alternatives because they are for people who have health problems or for people who want to avoid them.
Okay. Now, this is something else, switching gears a little bit, but it's also even of particular interest to me, something I read that you've done, and I want to hear about the Sacramento Food Bank project. And you were talking there about how some of the results for reversing diseases, eliminating medications, and that's of particular interest to me. I want to hear about that because it's something even before you and I met, I'm trying to institute on a smaller level here with a homeless shelter. And so I wanted to hear kind of your feedback, kind of how that went and kind of just how, what all y'all did to get these.
Well, I think there were several motivations behind this, and one of them was that I think we all get tired of hearing that economically disadvantaged people don't care about their health and they just want to eat cheeseburgers and potato chips all day. I've never thought that was the case, and I think it's a gross stereotyping generalization kind of thing. And then I also hear all the time how expensive this diet is. And it can be if you have all the food prepared for you and you shop at the most expensive stores and that sort of thing. But as you know, because you've been doing it for a long time too, for most of us, our grocery bills are significantly cheaper than most of our friends. And when I eat out in a restaurant, many times I have the most delicious dish and it costs less than anybody else. I mean, I was at my book club meeting this past week, and the bill for my dinner was $11.95, and everybody else had like $35 thing. And it was beautiful. I was stuffed. I didn't have to eat anything when I went home. So it's much cheaper. So I think the main objectives of that project were to show that disadvantaged people can learn to do this. They do want to do it. They're motivated. It will work, and that they can do it with limited means. And we were successful on all counts. And so that's a message we should be taking to people. And by the way, one of the reasons we should do this is that I talk a lot about the medical mill. People getting sucked into the medical mill with doctors who don't know how to do anything except do diagnostic testing and prescribe drugs and surgeries and that sort of thing. Well, the people who get the worst of this are economically disadvantaged people. So if you can pull them out of the medical mill, you reduce their costs, you reduce their grocery bill, you reduce all of the problems that keep them from getting ahead. It's hard to get ahead in life if you're sick and you don't feel well and you have $15 extra and it goes to subsidize a prescription drug that you need, So on all counts, we should be doing more of this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I agree. And like I said, that's even why the shelter that I'm talking to here locally, they have like a 90-day plus program for, kind of really bringing in rehabilitating. And that's why I was asking you about that, because I'm very interested in that, because that's what I'm putting together information now to take to them to say, look, here's how on multiple levels, this helps the people and it also helps the program and, even helps the economy on a bigger scale.
Well, you talk about the economy on a bigger scale. There's no question if we don't get this healthcare thing under control, it is the thing that has the best chance of bankrupting our country of anything. We cannot afford what we're doing right now. And there are two ways that it's going to impact us. One is just strictly financial. The companies can't afford the premiums they're paying. People can't afford the deductibles on their and the co-pays. I met a guy not too long ago who's paying $400 a month co-pay for diabetes drugs. That's a lot of money. And if you started taking $400 a month away from me, I would notice it, believe me. So economically, on an individual and on a macro basis, we can't afford it. But there's another issue, too, and that is that the country is falling apart from a health perspective. I mean, the military is already basically saying we have no shortage of people showing up who want to serve in the military. The problem is that so many of them are physically unqualified to do it. So we may not, it doesn't matter how much you throw at the military if you don't have people who physically can serve. So we have a lot of issues like that we need to pay attention to. This is the salvation of our country lies in part in solving this problem, and I don't think I'm being overly melodramatic when I say that.
What is that now? I'm thinking here, I may be jumping ahead, but I think, does that kind of tie in a lot with your books, one of your books, Solving America's Healthcare Crisis? Is that kind of some of the stuff you discuss in there?
Well, I discuss a lot of things in there. The biggest thing I discussed, my most recent book is Food Over Medicine, and the biggest thing I discussed there was the opportunity to use diet and lifestyle in healthcare, but also the idea of, it was really when I started being very public about this informed medical decision making. Because if you eat perfectly and you have a PSA test, the medical system can still kill you. I mean, the PSA test false positive rate is 78%. Okay, it's a useless test. I'm personal friends with the researcher who discovered prostate-specific antigen. It's not a marker for cancer. And we have destroyed the lives of about 1 million men in this country by taking out their prostates, and almost none of them had prostate cancer. So that's why I think it is so important that this idea of diet and lifestyle change be paired with informed medical decision making. Eating perfectly and doing what you're told in medicine can still create a very bad outcome. So that was my message, I think. In Food Over Medicine, there's even a chapter called How to Manage Your Doctor, which means that you have to know the answers to these things. You have to ask for information. You have to be the person driving the process of what happens to you, because following directions can really hurt you in the end.
Yep. Well, I think something that I like, too, that's very cool, and actually I'm telling everyone out there, I've got your book is on the way to me. I ordered it, The Food Over Medicine, and I love the certification course. Mm-hmm. Can you describe that a little bit for everyone listening? Because I like the way you're presenting that and kind of making it available to everybody.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I'll back up a little bit and tell you an observation that both Colin Campbell and I made early on. When I first met Colin Campbell, oh my gosh, it was 15 years ago or so, and we've become good friends and colleagues. And one of the things that we talked about the first time we ever sat down to compare notes was how our perception of what was going on with people was so different than what everybody, air quotes around that, says. Because he was being told the same thing that I was being told. Oh, you want to talk about all this detail, and, he had written, he was writing the China study when I first met him, and you're writing this book that has all this stuff. People don't want to know all that stuff. I mean, all that science is boring, and they don't care about that. And we were saying to each other back then, actually, people do want to know this. They are incredibly interested in how their body works and in becoming more informed. And the more informed people are about these issues, the more control they can take of their health. So my point in the certification courses is that when people join Wellness Informed Health, they get a basic boot camp education. They go through our Informed Health 101 and 201, which teaches them the basics of how you read the medical literature and interpret the things, and how to find good providers and the questions you should be asking, and all that sort of thing. And then we have 100 and some videos on our website, on the members' website, that they can watch. And then what invariably happens is people are jazzed about it. Now they want to learn more. They want to know more about how their body operates. They want to know more about specific things like weight loss or GI conditions and that sort of thing. So we started creating a little mini courses that people can take that teach them all that stuff, and they're very, very popular. And one of the nice things about these is we do have quizzes, and you have to complete the course and demonstrate that you learned. But it's not the formal education that we offer through our school, which is really time consuming. And boy, if you want to be a qualified health professional, it's a good idea to do those things. But this is a way for the lay person to learn more than what you would learn in a basic plant-based nutrition class. Like, for example, in the GI lectures and that course, we talk about reflux, and we talk about the side effects of some of the drugs. And actually, the whole theory of using PPIs and other drugs is based on a concept that's been proven to be untrue, which is not excess acid production, and it's actually not even the acid that causes the cancer, esophageal cancer, in the end. So a lot of that type of information, so that people really feel empowered to make good choices.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm taking it. So I'm telling everyone.
Good.
I'm going to take it.
They're fun courses, and people.
I'm looking forward to it.
And here's how we know that people like them. They sign up for more of them. That's why we keep offering more and more of them every year. And people are always writing and saying, why don't you do a course on this? Can you please put a course together on that? And if there were 25 of me, they'd be all done by now, but I can't make them happen fast enough. But anyway, the demand is there because people really like this stuff.
Yeah, because I saw there's a lot of courses already on there. And then you even have the advanced, don't you have even like an advanced study program?
Well, my advanced study program is kind of neat. What I do in that program, and I have hundreds of people that do this, that sign up for this, is every month I pick a book that I think people should read, and most of the time they're not going to, which I totally understand. I mean, my business is this. I read these books all the time. Well, what I do is I create 2 detailed slide sets and 2 live lectures that I do, and then I record them. I make videos of the lectures, and the slide sets are posted on a passcode protected site with the videos. And so I think we have 60 or 70 videos now on that site. And so if you want to know about neuroplasticity of the brain, the best book that's ever been written on the topic is The Mind and the Brain by Jeffrey Schwartz. There are 3 lectures on that. Proteinaholic by Garth Davis, 2 lectures on that. I'm doing some of the books are things that people wouldn't know a lot about, like Missing Microbes by Martin Blazer, how healthcare practices have destroyed the gut microbiome and the consequences on our health. Oh. So it's a really wide variety of the topics ranging from psychological disorders to orthopedic disorders. John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain. He's a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, who realized that most people who have back pain don't need surgery, they don't need drugs, they need to get in the gym and go home and live a normal life, and it goes away. So, and he cured hundreds of people. I have met his patients. He said, I was on my way to a lifetime of disability, and this guy told me to quit this crap and go home, and I did, and I am fine. And by the way, he's not suggesting that nobody ever needs intervention. He's suggesting that most of the time people don't. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let me ask you. Okay. And I know I've gathered a lot of stuff from us talking, and I'm pretty sure I know probably what your answer may be to this, but just put it out there because, again, my audience, here with Vegan Tour Guide ranges from people that have, like you and I, that have been plant-based vegan for a while, some that are, a few years, some just starting, and some that are just gathering, doing research. What are just some advice you would tell people as just being new, transitioning? And I know we talked about, of course, it's got to be all, of these food groups and all, but anything else kind of that you just give advice, maybe even people today that talk to you, maybe just like your quick 30-second elevator speech you may give people about, hey, starting out, here you go?
Well, here, I won't do a 30 seconds, but I'll tell you some things that can make this easier and I think are important. The first one is that eat foods that you like to eat, which I must have 25 people a week tell me, I am so glad you said that. And here's what I mean by that. We become foodies. When you do this for a while, you become interested in food. And I know I eat a lot of things that I never would have thought would be interesting to me 20-some years ago. I was in a very fancy restaurant a few weeks ago that didn't have anything for me to eat, but the chef is amazing, so he made this black lentil and quinoa dish with roasted parsnips. I mean, it was phenomenal. And, of course, everybody is eating their big, thick, hunk of flesh on the plate, and they're looking at my dish and going, wow, that looks really good.
Yep.
It's actually fabulous. So having said that, though, we have to put ourselves in the place of the person whose palate is not going to be tuned to that kind of thing. And so when somebody says, I just don't like vegetables, people say that all the time. I'll say, well, let me ask you a question. You like potatoes? Oh, yeah, I love those. Green beans? Oh, yeah. Peas, corn. And then, do you like bananas? Yeah. Cantaloupe, apples. Well, my point in all of this is that if you can find even 10 foods that people are willing to eat, it's a go. Mm-hmm. We forget that variety is a luxury of Western civilization. It's not a necessity for health. I mean, the Okinawans are living on 69% of their calories from sweet potatoes, which you and I might find a little bit repetitive, but they're not malnourished, all right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing, is don't think you have to take some trip into Exotica for this to work. Choose foods that you like, and if I tell all of my members, if I find out that you're choking down some, leafy green vegetable that you hate because you think it's better for you, I'm going to be upset with you. I want you to eat foods that you like. So that's the first thing. The second thing is people get all worried about food preparation and the time to do it. And so one of the things we tell everybody to do, in fact, I created a video about it that I put on my members' website called A Tour of Dr. Pam's Kitchen, because this is what I do. On Saturday morning, I go to the farmer's market, and then I hit a couple of other stores to get stuff to supplement that. And then over the weekend, I'll just take a couple of hours, and I can pay attention to this while I'm answering emails and doing other stuff at the same time, and I batch cook. So I'll bake 2 cookie sheets of sweet potatoes, and I'll bake a cookie sheet of beets and a couple cookie sheets of Brussels sprouts, and a big pot of pre-cooked rice and all that sort of thing. A big pot of soup, and it varies from week to week what I do, but you get the idea. And then that's what I eat from all week long. So when I come home, people think that because Chef Del is one of my business partners, I'm eating some gourmet treat 6 times a day that other people prepare. Actually, the kitchen is very busy, and sometimes he growls at me if I come in there too many times. So I'm on my own, which means that, nights that I teach from 7 to 11, I have an hour to, check the mail, play with the cat, eat my dinner, and, get ready to teach again. So I can eat from my stash 4 or 5 times a day. And then, the weekend I get prepared again. And it's easy to do. A couple baked sweet potatoes with a salad is a delicious meal. Beets and rice with salad, or Brussels sprouts and rice. And so if somebody listening to this might say, well, I don't like Brussels sprouts. Okay, then you make something else in advance. It really doesn't matter what it is. The key is just preparation so that you're not trying to cook 35 times a week. Because here's the thing. Now, most people really like this. When you eat this diet, you have to eat a lot of food. It goes through your system more quickly. So every 3 or 4 hours, you're going to need to eat. And you got to have that stuff ready so you don't go do things you shouldn't do just because you didn't have a plan.
Nice. And I tell people, too, and, a lot of people I talk to and all, and they say the same thing, that is so cool is as you go along with, and like you said, I love your idea of pretty much kind of the old phrase, meet people where they're at, find the stuff that they like. When you do this, you'll be amazed how your taste buds just naturally change.
They
just
will.
And me, growing up, I hated olives. Keep olives away from me. Now I love the things. And so, you said, Brussels, I didn't like it. And just over time, so that's the coolest thing, too, is that you even just naturally, I found, a lot of people just naturally even start opening up to more stuff as well. It's cool.
Yeah, but that'll happen over time.
Yeah.
The key is we have to make this easy for people to do.
Second,
one last thing I'll mention is that, and I think this is very important, is, again, we have to remember where people are. And I think too many times this is presented as, you have to do dietary perfection. And we spend a lot of time extracting promises from people that we know they can't and won't keep. And, in fact, we don't want to keep them either. And I mean things like, I'm never going to eat dessert again. I'm never going to have a cookie, and a piece of cake on my birthday is the slippery slope to the American diet. And I said to somebody the other day, I said, listen, if 2 cookies is standing between you and death, I don't really think I can help you at this point, all right? So what we try to help people do is to understand the difference between food and a treat, which means that it's okay to have something. I mean, our company's 20th anniversary was last year, and we had a big conference, and we did a lot of special things around it, and that's when you're going to have cupcakes, right? I mean, it's a big deal. It was a celebration. And, when I turned 60, I had champagne. That's a pretty big deal. Lived to be 60, no drugs, and all that stuff. So it's okay to do these things. They just can't be part of the daily fare. Mm-hmm. So my point in all of this is a lot of people get discouraged because they feel that they can't be compliant to the level that they think we expect. And so I try to dial that down a little bit and make sure that people understand that cookies are not needed for after every meal, but the cookies don't have to be off the table always, forever. And that seems to get people a little more willing to take a look at this as something viable and something they think they could see themselves doing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right. So look, I know we've talked about where do people find you? Where do you want the easiest way for people to find you?
Well, first of all, I'll give you my email address. I get about 1,000 emails a day, lots of people interested in this stuff, and I do answer them. My email address is pampopper@msn.com.
All right.
And then there are two websites. WellnessForumHealth.com is my company, and drpampopper.com is my personal website. And if you go to drpampopper.com, you can see Schroed's, my cat. And,
oh, yeah.
A lot of information I try to post on my blog every week or two. I'm not really disciplined about that, but I do try. And you can connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn, all the social media sites. Follow me on Twitter at Pam Popper.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Well, and I love, as we stated early on, you've got a lot going on staying busy, and I love the quote you'd included. I believe you attribute it to your mom, and it says about staying busy. It's better to wear out than rust out.
Yes, exactly. And all these people, I do not understand this idea of balance. I don't even know what that is, and I don't know that anybody really does it well. I think the most important thing is find things that you're passionate about. And of course, there's a little bit of there can be a little bit of a problem. I've always told people I suffer from this condition called FOMS, fear of missing something. So I want to do everything. I want to have a great career and write books and go to the symphony and raise money for the ballet company and run and do street races and go to the lake. And I mean, I have my list of things I like to do is very, very long, but I think that the energy that you get from having lots of stuff to be passionate about it's just far better than sitting around conserving energy. And I see people doing that. It's like, I don't want to wear myself out too much. I've actually had people say, well, I'd love to do that, but that would be 3 things in one weekend. I don't know. I mean, seriously? My weekend's usually 49 things, and you're worried about 3. And I'm not saying it is a moral judgment. I'm just saying that life is to be enjoyed and fun. We have a short time here. Get everything out of it you can. And here's bringing it back to our discussion. When you eat well and take care of yourself, you can do that. You have the energy to do it.
Yes, exactly. Well, I hope, speaking of life being enjoying, that this was, Schroeder approved of this.
Yes, he did. He's sitting here looking at me. The squirrel has gone on to other places, and he's looking at a couple of his toys saying, if you get off the phone, we could go play. So that's the look I'm getting right now.
Well, tell him I appreciate your time so much, Dr. Pam. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will free y'all up to play, and I look forward to following it. Like I said, seriously, I've got your book. It is on its way to me. I got the email telling me that, so I'm excited about your book. And doing that course as well. I love arming myself with more information, so I'm looking forward to that and look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye.
Okay. Dr. Pam, Schroeder, thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, thank you so much for all the information you shared. A lot of information about health. It obviously comes through in listening to you with both your passion as well as just your knowledge of how well studied you are on all this. That I know it's something great for all the listeners to hear. I love what you described. I loved how you talked about where a lot of us find ourselves. How early on you were doing what you called unintentional living. And that was kind of before, if you will, the transition. Then a book by, John McDougall. And then that kind of transformed you as to you call your intentional living phase and where you're at now and staying busy in life, doing so many things. But the things you're doing are, putting it out there, the information, out there for people to make positive changes in their lives, to realize, that food heals and to find out, what we're missing. I love how you talked about it. Listen, everybody, get the fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, get those going in there. Love you summing up, again, some of the things that people, be surprised to find out, such as, like you said, about oils. That's something really you need to steer away from. And everyone can find that out, on some great videos that, Dr. Pam has posted on her site. And like we talked about it there, here's where, and don't worry, I'm going to have these in the show notes, but for also people listening right now that are in a position to write it down, you can reach her at wellnessforumhealth.com or drpampopper.com. So those are both of her websites. Facebook at Dr. Pam Popper. And then, of course, like she said, email her. She gets a lot of emails, but she answers them. Pam Popper at msn.com. So, again, you can reach her there to get a lot of information. And, again, just, take it all in. I would advise everybody, listen to this one, a couple times. I know as, I've edited this, of course, my initial thoughts. I always write stuff down after, I speak with someone, had those initial thoughts. And then after I went through editing this, more came to mind, more that I learned. She has great books out. We're going to put links to those books, especially like she said, the one she recently did, Food Over Medicine. And then she has the certification courses. So if you really want to expand your knowledge, you can do that. Like I mentioned, I'm doing it. I'm definitely going to, add that to my life, add that to my knowledge. So I advise others to do the same. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Again, if you're first time with us, really do appreciate it. Help spread the word, because that is everything I want to do here. Spread the word and spread the information. So please tell everybody. You can find us at VeganTourGuide.com. Instagram, Facebook, and everything is also at VeganTourGuide, Twitter at VeganTourGuide. Email me, VeganTourGuide@gmail.com. Respond to all of them. Love to hear from you. Love to hear the questions, feedback. Also love to hear requests for future people. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this is because of my friend Laura that's also been on the show, and we've since become friends from her coming on the show. Dr. Pam is someone that she follows and was like, Mike, she would be awesome. And so, Laura, you definitely lived up to that because she has been awesome. Loved having Dr. Pam on. Look forward to continuing to follow her as well. So thanks again, everybody. My advice, too, is get involved. Find meetup groups. Find local veg fests that you've got going on. Check those out. Go to maybe even travel to some of the larger scenes that you have going on. A lot of great conferences coming up here soon. Love to see some of y'all there. Please drop me a line if you're going to be at any. So I'll let you know if I'm going to be there. Plus, I always like to give a great shout out to Pat Flynn for information and inspiration on putting together the podcast. Plus to bensound.com for the use of the information here and the sound audio. And remember, everybody, live Pura Vida.